WrestleMania 42 is no longer going to be held in New Orleans. So once the shocking announcement happened, it got me thinking, just what is WrestleMania 42 gonna look like? Not in terms of location, but matches. What is going to be the match card for WrestleMania next year? So of course I started speculating and overthinking, and what I came up with was a pretty good guess for what the match card is gonna be. At least I thought. So let's go ahead and predict what the WrestleMania 42 match card is going to be 11 months out. I'm Brandon, and this is Wrestling Talk. Okay, so obviously for WrestleMania, you're gonna get 7 matches per night for a total of 14. I went ahead and booked 16 matches because you never know what's gonna happen. People get injured, people get released, people get signed. I'm just giving myself a bit of a cushion. Also, I tried really hard not to make every match a multi-person match, and I'm pretty happy with what I came up with because out of 16 matches, only 6 of them are multi-person. When you look at WrestleMania 41, there were 14 matches with 5 of them being multi-person, and then at WrestleMania 40, you had 13 matches with 6 of them being multi-person. So I don't want to hear anyone in the comments complaining that I have too many multi-person matches, okay? I thought a lot about this. But anyway, let's get started with my best guess for what the WrestleMania 42 match card is gonna be. Before next year's WrestleMania, I'll come back to this video and see how wrong I was. Let's start off with the tag titles. I do not think both sets of men's tag titles are going to be defended at WrestleMania because Triple H did not do that this past year when he had a dope match for the WWE tag titles right in front of him. So because of that, I think you're only going to have one match for either one or both sets of men's tag titles. And I think it's going to be a ladder match because WrestleMania needs a ladder match. It just does. It adds to the excitement and variety of the show. Honestly, I thought this past WrestleMania was missing a ladder match. So what's the match going to be? A 6-pack ladder match for the WWE tag titles. So I got 6 teams competing because I think that's a good number, and those teams are the Street Profits, the New Day, Fraxium, the Motor City Machine Guns, the Lucha Bros, and Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. Now, noticeably, I left off DIY because I just want them to split up at some point. I think Tommaso Ciampa could be a great mid-card heel champion, and as much as I enjoy DIY, I would much rather see these 6 teams in the mix at WrestleMania. When it comes to Penta and Rey Fenix, it's only a matter of time before they team up as a tag team and take those titles off of the New Day. And then Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. These 2 guys were great in NXT together. Carmelo Hayes just hasn't really had the opportunity to do anything on the main roster of substance, so I think when Trick Williams debuts on the main roster, and I think that's going to happen within the next year, I think he has to team up with Carmelo Hayes. They have to form a heel tag team managed by The Miz, and honestly, in this match, I would have them win. I'm not going to get into who should win for all of these matches, but for this specific one, Melo and Trick should win. Man, if you throw these 6 teams in a ladder match, it is going to be insane. It could possibly be the best ladder match since TLC 2. Moving on to the women's tag titles, I actually am really proud with this one. I have Asuka and Kairi Sane versus Io Sky and Julia for the women's tag titles. Did I just cook? I think I did. Asuka is eventually going to return, and I hope it's as a heel, because I think she should be the one to dethrone Io Sky as the women's world champion. Once that happens, I think it's gonna set up a year-long feud between Io and Asuka. Let's say Asuka beats Io Sky around Evolution or SummerSlam. Asuka can hold the title all the way till the end of the year. Around that time, she can have a match against Rhea Ripley, and Io Sky can interfere, costing Asuka the victory. That way, Rhea gets the world title back, and Io and Asuka can feud leading into Mania. Obviously, at some point, I think Asuka and Kairi are going to get the women's tag team titles back, because, obviously. So now you have the Kabuki Warriors as heels, you have their former friend Io Sky who is going after them, but if she's going to face them at WrestleMania, she needs some backup, and I think that backup should be Julia. And yes, I know she was a heel when she first debuted on Raw and she was attacking Io Sky, but lately when you look at her on SmackDown, she seems more of a stoic tweener. So I think as long as her and Io respect each other, they can be a tag team. And of course, this entire match is just an excuse to get all of the Japanese wrestlers together and put on a clinic. Like, come on, this match would cook. Like, cook. with gas. I don't see Io Sky staying in the world title scene until WrestleMania. Of course, she could always go after the women's IC title, but I think this is the most exciting matchup for the women's tag titles. All right, now let's move on to the Intercontinental titles. Starting off with the men, I got a triple threat, and that is Logan Paul versus Karrion Kross versus LA Knight for the Intercontinental title. Now, here's my reasoning. Logan Paul and Karrion Kross kind of have history from the WrestleMania match this past year, and since then Karrion Kross has gotten super over with fans, so he needs a spot at WrestleMania next year, and Logan Paul is the perfect heel for him to face because, let's face it, the fans have turned Karrion Kross babyface whether WWE likes it or not, so by the time WrestleMania comes around, he needs to go up against a heel. Logan Paul is the perfect heel, especially if Logan Paul walks in as the Intercontinental Champion. And when it comes to LA Knight, bro needs to move over to Raw, like now. He has done everything there is to do on SmackDown. He's basically just treading water. So whether it be due to the draft or the transfer window, at some point before Mania next year, LA Knight needs to go from SmackDown to Raw. Now there are other guys you can throw in here too to make it like a 5-man match or a 6-man match, namely AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and Sheamus. But when it comes to Sheamus, I don't think WWE sees him as a draw, because he could have easily been slotted into the IC title match at WrestleMania 41 or WrestleMania 40, and they didn't do it. So it stands to reason that they're not going to do it at WrestleMania 42. I think at some point Sheamus will win the IC title, but I don't think it's going to be at WrestleMania. When it comes to AJ Styles and Finn Balor, I honestly don't know. I would expect both guys to have a spot at WrestleMania, so maybe they get included into this match to make it a 5-person. But to me, a triple threat is a bit cleaner, so I would just keep it Logan Paul versus Karrion Kross versus LA Knight. Moving on to the women's Intercontinental title match, I am going with a Fatal 4-Way because I loved the Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania 41, so I think the women should have a chance to do that. So I have Bayley versus Lyra Valkyria versus Roxanne Perez versus Stephanie Vaquer. At some point soon, Becky is going to take the IC title off of Lyra, and then at some point later on in the year, Bayley is going to take the title off of Becky. Once that happens, I think Bayley is going to walk into WrestleMania 42 as the women's IC champion, and I think she's going to have all 3 women as challengers. Bayley and Roxanne already feuded a few months ago, so that story is already set. Lyra Valkyria is friends with Bayley in storyline, but her trying to win back that title from Bayley would make a lot of sense. And then you throw in Stephanie Vaquer. She is going to be the next Rhea Ripley. She is an absolute megastar. So at some point in the next year, she needs to move up to the main roster, and she has to have a spot at WrestleMania. I don't think she's gonna like win the Rumble or the Chamber, but I do think her winning the women's IC title at WrestleMania is very possible. That would be a huge moment. And also, I think this match really highlights the next generation of women's wrestling. Yes, of course you have Bayley in there, but then when you throw in Lyra, Roxanne, and Stephanie, this is really going to be a showcase of the future. I think it would be an awesome match. Moving on to the US titles. For the women's US title, I also have a triple threat, and that is Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch versus Chelsea Green. Let me explain. I do not think Charlotte Flair is going to be involved in the world title scene at next year's WrestleMania. I think WWE has kind of learned their lesson. I do think her and Alexa are going to form a tag team at some point soon, but I don't think that's going to last until next year's WrestleMania. That's something we have to think about. Storylines that are being set up now aren't just going to pay off at next year's WrestleMania. A lot of them are going to be paid off and done with well before WrestleMania. So by the time we get to next year's WrestleMania, I think Charlotte is just going to be competing for the US title. I actually see her walking in as the US champion. Now you could just do Charlotte Flair versus Mariah May, because I do think Mariah May is going to WWE soon. But honestly, given how stacked the women's roster is, I think Mariah May is actually going to debut in NXT. She'll probably have a spot at the Royal Rumble, maybe that's where she debuts, but similar to how Jordynne Grace and Ricky Saints went to NXT before going to the main roster, I think WWE is going to do the same thing with Mariah May. So who is Charlotte going to face for the US title at WrestleMania? I think Becky Lynch is the perfect opponent. After she loses the women's IC title, I think Becky's not going to have much to do on Raw, so why not have her go over to SmackDown, not permanently because I know she's a Raw superstar through and through, but just for WrestleMania season so she can challenge Charlotte Flair, her oldest rival, and basically go, hey, I won the women's IC title, if I win the women's US title, I am now the first ever true women's Grand Slam champion. So that can be Becky's motivation, and then the two of them can elevate the women's US title. The only problem is both of them are heels. I don't see Becky turning face by next year's Mania. I kinda think Charlotte might, but it's gonna be a huge uphill battle. So you're gonna need to throw in a babyface just to have someone for the audiences to root for, and that's why I think Chelsea Green is gonna get involved. I think this is a perfect opportunity for Becky and Charlotte to not only elevate the women's US title, but also Chelsea Green. I think the three of them would put on a super entertaining triple threat, and of course having Chelsea come out on top would be awesome, because then she could go on and say that she's the first ever two-time women's US champion. Okay, was that a lot of multi-person matches? Yes, but keep in mind I only have one more, so the rest of these matches are all one-on-ones. So moving on to the men's US title, I have Jacob Fatu versus Bronson Reed. I think Jacob Fatu is going to lose the US title to Solo Sikoa around SummerSlam. But I don't think that's going to be the end of their story, because I do think before WrestleMania next year, Jacob's going to win that title back. Now, a lot of you probably think he's ready for the main event scene. I do too. I just don't think there's room for him in the main event scene. I think WWE has other plans. So I say just have him defend the US title against a big heel, and what better opponent is there than Bronson Reed? I mean, this could be your Godzilla versus King Kong match. Monster versus monster, throwing each other through tables. It would be insane. Honestly, it could be a last monster standing match if they want. Moving on to a non-title match that's basically the equivalent of Jacob Fatu versus Bronson Reed for Raw. That is Braun Breaker versus Gunther. Now, a lot of people want to see Braun Breaker versus Jacob Fatu. I'm one of them, but I don't want to see that match just yet, because when that match happens, I think it could main event WrestleMania. So I would not pull the trigger on that at WrestleMania 42. Instead, I would do what WWE is already doing, building up Braun Breaker as an unstoppable force on Raw and building up Jacob Fatu as an immovable object on SmackDown. And at next year's WrestleMania, you could have each guy have a major singles victory against a major contender. Jacob beating Bronson Reed would be huge for him, and Braun Breaker beating Gunther would be even bigger. Because prior to Braun Breaker, Gunther was the unstoppable force on Raw. And if you remember that episode of Raw where Paul Heyman was hyping up Gunther to Braun Breaker, he was talking about how Jey Uso was a good champion because he beat Gunther, and then he kept repeating Gunther like 3 times. I think that's planting the seeds for Braun versus Gunther. So I think save it for WrestleMania, because that match would probably steal the show. It would be insane. The only reason that match might not happen is I could absolutely see Gunther getting drafted to SmackDown, because he's done everything there is to do on Raw. He won the IC title, he won the World Heavyweight title, so I could see Gunther being a prime candidate for the transfer window right before WrestleMania. But if not, I think Gunther versus Braun Breaker would just be insane. Okay, moving on to my last multi-person match. The Wyatt 6 versus the Bloodline. Enough said. You got 4 dudes on the Wyatt 6 side, and by the time WrestleMania comes around, you're gonna have 4 dudes on the Bloodline side. Solo Sikoa, Jeff Cobb, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. There are a few reasons I think this match is gonna happen. One is the Wyatt 6 returning on SmackDown as basically full-on babyfaces. Yes, they're creepy and scary, but the crowd is super behind them because of what they represent, so it's kind of hard to make them heels. And then the other reason is something Triple H said when the Wyatt 6 originally debuted. He was at a press conference for one of their PLEs, and while talking about the Wyatt 6, he mentioned how he is so excited eventually to see the Wyatt 6 face off against the Bloodline. Now, at the time, the Bloodline was a whole different group, but still, I think this match from a marquee standpoint really sells itself. The Wyatt 6 versus the Bloodline. And it would do so much good. It would give the Wyatt 6 a major WrestleMania presence. It would finally give Solo Sikoa a match at WrestleMania. And I think this would be a blast too. This would be the chaotic equivalent to the ladder match. So you would probably want them on separate nights. Alright, so you're probably wondering, what about Nikki Cross? Well, she might get involved in my next match, which is Liv Morgan versus Alexa Bliss in a street fight. This is a match that could have easily happened at WrestleMania 41, and WWE didn't do it because they wanted to set up the Becky, Lyra, and Bayley story. But I think they're slowly building to this because Liv Morgan eliminated Alexa Bliss from the Rumble, and the Chamber. You don't have the same person eliminate Alexa twice for nothing. And when you look at this version of Alexa and this version of Liv, it's a dream match. So I would love to see it as a street fight, because when you look at what Liv did at the Elimination Chamber this past year, she can go. And generally speaking, the women don't usually have the chance to have a hardcore match on a PLE. So I say, why not switch it up? Have it be Liv versus Alexa in a street fight. If WrestleMania is in Vegas next year, call it a Sin City street fight. And of course, Raquel Rodriguez can come out to help out Liv. Nikki Cross can come out to help out Alexa. It can just be pure chaos. I want to see it. I also think the women's division should continue to have non-title matches at WrestleMania moving forward, and I think this is the perfect candidate for next year. Okay, next up, this is the most random match I could think of, but I needed to get both guys on the card. Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre. This one's pretty simple. Both guys are going to need something to do at WrestleMania next year. I don't think Kevin Owens is going to be back in time for them to run that program back, so Randy will be free. Drew, I don't know what WWE's doing with him right now, so yeah, nothing special with this one, but I would love to see it. Alright, 6 matches left. Before we get into our 4 world title matches, I got my 2, I'm going to call them emotional matches. One is a sad and depressing emotion, and the other is like a happy, bittersweet one. Let's start off with the bittersweet one. Rey Mysterio versus Dominic Mysterio, mask versus hair. The reason why I think this could be an emotional match is I think it could very well be Rey Mysterio's retirement match. Rey did get injured leading into WrestleMania 41 and he couldn't compete, but when he does come back, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of wants to hang it up. And at the end of the day, Dom Mysterio needs to be the one to retire him. So you could do this match one of 2 ways. If Rey wants to retire soon, this can be mask versus hair, but surprisingly, Dom wins, meaning Rey would have to remove his mask and retire. Or if Rey's not going to retire, then this can just be a pure, chaotic, fun comedy match, where it's mask versus hair, Dom loses, and then Rey shaves Dom's head. I think there's a reason Dom's growing his hair as long as he is, because eventually he knows he's going to get it shaved off whenever they want to do this mask versus hair thing. As much as Dominic Mysterio is kind of a babyface when compared to Finn Balor and the other members of the Judgment Day, WWE seems to be leaning more into him as a heel, pairing him up with Roxanne even though he's with Liv. And besides, once you get Dom in the ring with Rey Mysterio, the crowd is not going to cheer for Dom over Rey. It's not going to happen. Alright, moving on to my actual legit emotional match. Sami Zayn versus Jey Uso, Hell in a Cell. Sami Zayn is going to turn heel, and I think he's going to be the one that ends up costing Jey Uso his World Heavyweight title. Once that happens, I think it's going to kick off a big feud between these two guys, and it's going to be really heartbreaking. It's going to be the end of that beautiful friendship from the Bloodline, but I think it's necessary because Sami's babyface character has gotten really stale. Jey Uso is a certified main event player at this point, so I don't think him teaming up with Jimmy again and going after the tag titles is going to help him in any way. I think he needs a big singles match at WrestleMania, and to me, this is the biggest one. It's emotional, it's heartbreaking, and it's going to be a Hell in a Cell because it's going to be the culmination of a feud. Because Sami versus Jey, that's a match that's going to happen before the end of the year. But if they spread out the 3 matches over the next year, having the rubber match or the trilogy ender at WrestleMania would be perfect. And similar to having a ladder match at WrestleMania, I think WrestleMania also needs a Hell in a Cell match. And if you put Sami Zayn in there, oh my god, it's going to be great. Alright, moving on to the 4 world title matches. Starting off with the Women's World Championship, I have Bianca Belair defending against Royal Rumble winner Jade Cargill. A lot of people think we're going to get Bianca versus Rhea in next year's WrestleMania. I'm not seeing it. I feel like WWE already kind of scratched that Rhea-Bianca itch at this past year's WrestleMania. So while I do think they will revisit that one-on-one match, I think it could happen at like WrestleMania 43 or 44. But when I look at the storylines currently being set up, Bianca versus Jade is the endgame. Bianca is going to return probably as a babyface and slowly turn heel. I don't think it's going to be overnight. But what I do see happening is Naomi winning Money in the Bank, cashing in on Jade Cargill, becoming the WWE Women's Champion, carrying that through the rest of the year, and eventually Bianca Belair needs to be the one to dethrone her. Once that happens, Bianca is going to walk into WrestleMania as the champion, and I think Jade Cargill is like destined to win a Royal Rumble at some point. She is like a perfect candidate for it. And after Charlotte Flair won the last Royal Rumble, I think WWE is going to want like a safe choice to win this year's Rumble. You know, someone who the fans can get behind. And I think that someone is definitely Jade Cargill. So I think Jade Cargill wins the Rumble, challenges Bianca, and then at WrestleMania 42, we get the dream match we wanted ever since Jade Cargill signed with WWE. Now, you could throw Naomi in there to make it a triple threat. I would not do that. I would just have it be one-on-one for the world title. But I would include Naomi into the match. I'm not saying she needs to be the special guest referee, but I would have Naomi interfere to like try to help Bianca win, and then Jade has to fight against two of them. Because at some point Bianca's going to turn heel, which means she's probably going to link up with Naomi, so the two of them are going to kind of be aligned. It just makes perfect sense. At WrestleMania 40, the big three teamed up. At WrestleMania 41, the big three were split. Jade and Naomi were off fighting, and then Bianca was off trying to chase a title of her own. At WrestleMania 42, you put the button on this entire story. Bianca versus Jade with Naomi also involved. I would love to see it, and honestly, I'm more excited to see that match than Rhea versus Bianca right now. So whether the match happens before WrestleMania or not, I don't know. Something tells me WWE is going to want to push it though. So Jade's winning the Women's Rumble. Who's winning the men's? Well, for the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania 42, I have Seth Rollins defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Royal Rumble winner Roman Reigns. I think WWE wants Roman to win a Royal Rumble at some point. Yes, Roman Reigns won a Royal Rumble before, but that was back when people hated him. I think WWE wants Roman to win a Rumble when people are behind him completely. And also that way they can add him to the list of 2-time Royal Rumble winners, which I think they want to do because we don't know how much longer Roman is going to be wrestling. He said in interviews only a few more years. So here's what I do. I would have Seth beat Jey Uso around SummerSlam due to an interference from Sami Zayn. Then I would have Seth hold it until Mania, Roman wins the Rumble, Roman challenges Seth for the World Heavyweight title. Now, does Roman and Seth need the World Heavyweight title? No. Does the World Heavyweight title need Roman versus Seth? Absolutely. If you want that title to feel like a main event title, you gotta put it on the biggest possible match, and I think Roman versus Seth is that match. It could main event night 1 or night 2, it doesn't matter. But at some point before Roman hangs it up, you need to have a true one-on-one match at WrestleMania between these two guys. Alright, moving on to the WWE Women's Championship, I have Rhea Ripley defending against Elimination Chamber winner Tiffany Stratton. From a marquee standpoint, this match sells itself. Rhea in the all black heavy metal look, Tiffany Stratton in the pink Barbie look. The posters that could be generated from this matchup would be awesome. But also, this is kind of a dream match too. It's like opposites attract. Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton are two of the most over people on their respective brands, and I think both of them are on a trajectory for this match to happen. Rhea, I think, is going to win the Women's World title back before next year's WrestleMania, and Tiffany, I think, is going to lose the WWE Women's title before WrestleMania. But she is still super over. I feel like her popularity is only growing. So I think fans would be totally behind her winning the Elimination Chamber. Plus, it would be awesome to see who goes heel in this feud because the fans love Rhea, they love Tiffany. I think WWE would just want to put them together and see what happens because they're two of their biggest stars. And again, when I think of matchups for Rhea Ripley, other than Bianca Belair, Tiffany Stratton is the opponent of hers that excites me the most. From an in-ring standpoint, this match could potentially steal the show. It would be awesome. But moving on to the main event of night 2. You've probably already guessed it by process of elimination, or if you just like scrolled to the end of the video to see. I have Cody Rhodes defending the WWE Undisputed title against the Elimination Chamber winner, CM Punk. Did you think I was going to say The Rock? Because I wasn't. I'll be honest with you, I don't think The Rock's going to return to wrestling for a while. Mainly because he has The Smashing Machine coming out this October, and the movie looks great. So great to where I think The Rock's going to get an Oscar nomination. And if he gets that Oscar nomination, Oscar season happens during the same time as WrestleMania season. So The Rock probably won't be able to put in a WrestleMania training camp because he'll have to be going to the Golden Globes and all the luncheons and the Vanity Fair stuff. So because of that, I don't think The Rock's going going to be at WrestleMania 42. So if he's not, what is the next biggest match to do for Cody Rhodes? It's CM Punk. They've already been setting it up for years. Before the Royal Rumble 2 years ago, Punk and Cody had this awesome promo segment right before it. A year later, they had that same type of a promo right before the Rumble. Mark my words, it's gonna happen again before this year's Royal Rumble. The only difference is this year, they're gonna pay it off because rule of thirds. I think Cody is gonna be the one to dethrone Cena before he retires. I don't think it's likely that Punk is gonna participate in the Saudi Royal Rumble, but even if he does, I don't think he's gonna win. I think he is going to win the Elimination Chamber, challenge Cody Rhodes for the undisputed title. There is your main event for night 2. The only problem is one of these guys is going to have to be a heel, or at the very least lean into being a heel. And honestly, it's probably got to be Cody Rhodes because I do not see people booing CM Punk at all. So however WWE ends up handling that is going to be super entertaining, but I actually think out of all the matches I've predicted, this is the one I'm most confident in. They're not doing anything to set it up right now, but by the time we get to the Rumble, I feel like they will. But that's it. Those are my predictions for the official match card of WrestleMania 42. What did you think? Comment below, let me know, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.